coming, and I don't think they should be restricted from further examination of your overall records if they believe it is pertinent to an investigation that they are currently doing.
There has to be a limit, though. There has to be a limit in terms of how far back the Integrity Commission requires information.
Justice Minister Delroy Chuck is once again actively advocating for modifications to the Integrity Commissions Act. This is another edition of Cover Story Highlights. Let's get after it. But before we do, let me wish for all of my subscribers and viewers a very happy new year and wish you all the best for 2024. I invited those of you who have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do so now, and like, share, and comment on the contents. The ongoing challenges by the Justice Minister Delroy Chuck to sections of the Integrity Commissions Act of 2017 highlight a critical debate over transparency and investigative powers. Chuck's support for amendments aiming to modify sections of the Act underscores the nuanced nature of balancing accountability with what appears to be Chuck's personal agenda. During the first Joint Select Committee meeting held last week, a proposal from Permanent Secretaries suggested that there should be a change to a section empowering the Commission to delve into past 10 years of public service by declarants. This retrospective investigation is designed to assist in resolving present declaration-related issues. However, the crux of the disagreement lies in whether there should be a stipulated time frame for the Commission's retrospective powers. Chuck and Head Bartlett, the Joint Select Committee chairman, argued for a specified limit on how far back the Commission can go, emphasizing the need for practicality and efficiency in investigation.
There has to be a limit, though. There has to be a limit in terms of how far back the Integrity Commission requires information. Furthermore, once they have signed off some form of compliance, then one would assume, I must admit that I get it every year, but there was 1 year where they asked about 2 companies of which I was supposed to be shareholders 20 years ago. I wrote them, I never heard of these companies. But when I really check, it was 2 companies my office formed, which was the normal thing, that you form companies that your clients take over. And when I check, in fact, they were in the archives. And I had to go and get them out of the archives and spend money to have them closed because they never had any transactions. But that is almost 20 years after that I had to go back and check on those. I did not have any idea. And I'm saying, Chairman, that various allegations, put it no stronger than that, have been made by parliamentarians and by public officials, including what the permanent secretaries are saying, that they're going back to investigate matters which occur decades ago. And, you know, it just seems that there has to be a limit, just like the statute of declaration for, say, civil matters. I don't think that once they're signed off on your statutory declaration, or for that matter, 7 years have passed, or even 10 years, that the Commission should be asking for further clarity or further information.
Now, listen to Malahoo Forte's response.
Instead of seeing it as so burdensome, I don't think it's unreasonable to inquire whether the directorship still exists. But your explanation may dismiss the suspicion that there is anything untoward. And all declarant, I think instead of going into this fight, we have to understand that while you are in office, If suspicion, if something triggers a suspicion, it doesn't mean that the suspicion leads to guilt. It doesn't mean it leads to something. You just need to provide the clarity. In other cases, it may be a little more difficult. But if an offense is committed, as a standard rule, time does not run against the crown in prosecuting offenses unless it's a statutory offense, and the statute creating the offense prescribes a limited time period within which the prosecution is to take place. And if the time passes, it becomes statute bar. But it's also not helpful for the approach that has been taken. I think it's the approach as to how far back one goes, bearing in mind that people may not keep records. But we must also be mindful that conduct by persons in former positions may impact the approach they take currently. And so I don't know that it should be a hard and fast rule to say that if you were in a former role and questions arise on the examination of a declaration, you should not be asked to provide the information. It has to depend on the circumstance. It has to depend on the matter being investigated.
It will be interesting to see your comments on Malahoo Forte's suggestion. Meanwhile, members of the People's National Party within the Joint Select Committee resisted the notion of any time stipulation. First, let us listen to Julian Robinson's take and then Peter Bunting.
In relation to what the Permanent Secretaries Board recommends, that it should only be limited to the period for which a public official has held office. I don't support that, because it is possible in the scope of your investigation, the Integrity Commission, that they may have discovered things, you may have been in a different post or something, and I don't think they should be restricted from further examination of your overall records if they believe it is pertinent to an investigation that they are currently doing in terms of corruption. Meaning there may be issues that may arise once you start investigating. Let's say the person is now a member of parliament, they may have been a councillor before or another official, and there are issues that arise from the previous one. The Permanent Secretaries Board is basically saying it should be limited to the post you hold now, and I don't support that.
Mr. Chairman, I understand and I'm sympathetic to the example Minister Chuck made. However, if we look globally, look at heads of government and states and senior ministers who have been successfully prosecuted for corruption. It is usually after they have left office, because while they're in that high office, they can often protect themselves from prosecution. In fact, some have explicit immunity for the holders of the office. So it is invariably years after they have left office that the evidence comes to the surface. And if you therefore put a statute bar on it, then you'll make the likelihood of such prosecutions very remote. So I really don't believe that you should have anything similar to, say, the tax authorities, who I gather can't go back further than 6 or 7 years, whatever the figure is.
This stance taken by the two PNP members suggests a belief in the importance of unrestricted access to past public life records, likely driven by a commitment to thorough scrutiny and a reluctance to impose limitations that might compromise the Commission's investigative authority. But despite this, Chuck dig in.
Let me just respond to Member Bunting. First of all, virtually all crimes are not statute barred. So once you've committed a crime, if you did it 30, 40 years ago, it could be investigated. What I'm concerned about is in terms of the Integrity Commission asking you questions beyond, say, 10, 15 years, or even before you became a public official. Because I just think it is quite invasive. And quite frankly, I think it was the Solicitor General, Ms. Aldred, who has pointed out, that a lot of the information that the Integrity Commission is asking for, really, they should not, because it's an invasion of privacy. I forgot the case, SG, that you said the Privy Council ruled on a case from the Turks and Caicos, that some of the information they're asking you about matters in your bank account or your private transactions, that these are matters which don't touch on your role as a public official, and therefore it is quite invasive.
After all this, Chuck still had the support of his government crony Ed Bartlett.
I think the point that Member Chuck was making in relation to time is of some importance that we should look at. In other words, how far back in time do you go, and how relevant would those things be to the current situation? And in fact, who determines that in the end?
This debate encapsulates a broader tension in governance, balancing the imperative for transparency and accountability against the practical constraints of investigative processes. The outcome of this deliberation will not only shape the powers of the Integrity Commission, but it should also influence the broader landscape of public service scrutiny and accountability in Jamaica. As the discussions unfold, the principles of transparency must be upheld, which is crucial for the effective functioning of the Integrity Commission. And that was Cover Story Highlights. Tune in again next time for another edition of Cover Story Highlights. In the meantime, please subscribe, like, share, and add your comments below.